Hey, welcome back to the channel. Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a heated argument. Your heart pounds, every word feels like a weapon, every sentence a battle. You carefully craft your next response, determined to prove your point. But the other person, they're doing the exact same thing. Neither of you is really listening. You're just waiting for a chance to strike back. And then he steps in. He doesn't take a side. He doesn't tell you what to say. Instead, he whispers something unsettling in your ear. You've already lost. What does that even mean? You're fighting, defending yourself, standing your ground. How could that possibly mean defeat? But according to him, the moment you engage in this kind of battle, you've already surrendered your power. True strength, he argues, doesn't come from proving you're right. It comes from something far more unexpected. So what is this hidden power? And why does silence often speak louder than words? Most people think power comes from winning arguments, from proving others wrong, from dominating a conversation. But Nietzsche saw things differently. To him, power wasn't in words, it was in control. Think about it. Why do people argue? If you've ever been in a heated debate, you know how quickly it escalates. But have you ever stopped to wonder why people argue in the first place? Nietzsche would say that most arguments have nothing to do with truth. They're about something deeper, psychological needs. Ego. People argue because their sense of self is on the line. Admitting they're wrong feels like losing a part of themselves, and the mind resists that at all costs. Power struggles. Some arguments aren't about facts or logic, they're about dominance. Who speaks last? Who controls the tone? Who forces the other to back down? Social validation. Some people don't even argue because they care about the point. They just want to appear intelligent, confident, or strong in front of others. Nietzsche saw all of these as signs of weakness. He believed that those who react emotionally to arguments are not in control. They are being controlled. The moment someone provokes you and you react, you've already lost. Now, this is where Nietzsche's famous concept, the will to power, comes in. It's often misunderstood as brute strength, but in reality, it's about shaping reality to your will. And the most powerful way to do that? Not reacting. Enter the Übermensch, the ideal superior individual in Nietzsche's philosophy. He isn't controlled by emotion like the average person. He doesn't argue just to win or prove a point. He decides when to engage and when to remain silent. Because real power isn't about talking, it's about controlling the entire interaction. Picture this, a business meeting. Two people are arguing. One is loud, aggressive, determined to prove they're right. The other, calm, silent. They listen more than they speak. They don't get pulled into an emotional battle. And when they do finally say something, it's sharp, well-timed, and shifts the entire conversation. Who truly holds the power here? Nietzsche would say, it's always the one who remains in control. Silence, when used correctly, isn't weakness. It's a weapon. It forces the other person to reveal more about themselves. It makes them uneasy, second-guessing their own words. It creates tension, and tension puts you in control. The Übermensch doesn't just stay silent in arguments. He wields silence like a blade. A pause, a moment of restraint, a single calculated response that flips the entire situation. Because Nietzsche's version of power isn't about fighting, it's about mastering the battlefield before the fight even begins. And history's greatest minds understood this. They didn't win through noise. They won through control. Socrates, Steve Jobs, Miyamoto Musashi, three men who embodied this principle in their own way. Socrates never needed to yell, attack, or force his point. Instead, he used questions to make people expose their own contradictions. He didn't tell them they were wrong. He led them to realize it themselves. And that's the essence of silent power. Steve Jobs, he didn't waste energy on unnecessary fights. But when something truly mattered, he went all in. He wasn't reactive. He was strategic. He dictated the flow of the conversation, choosing when to challenge and when to hold back. And Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai, he mastered the art of waiting, of patience, of striking only when the moment was right. All three of them knew what Nietzsche preached. Power doesn't come from proving a point. It comes from controlling the game. And sometimes the most powerful move isn't speaking at all. He led them toward his vision, not by force, but by guiding them to see it for themselves. He let them debate, question, and voice their concerns, knowing that true belief comes not from being told, but from discovering the truth on one's own. He never imposed ideas. He made others believe they had arrived at them independently. Most people argue to prove they are right, driven by ego. But Jobs? He argued with purpose, not to win an argument, but to win people. If words don't move others to action, they are nothing but noise. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai, understood a deeper truth. The greatest victories are won before the fight even begins. A warrior's sharpest weapon is not his blade, but his mind. He won over 60 duels, not just through sheer skill, but by mastering the art of psychological warfare. His most famous battle against Sasaki Kojiro wasn't decided by the swing of a sword, but by the manipulation of emotions. Kojiro, a master of speed, expected a duel on his terms, but Musashi arrived hours late, deliberately enraging him. In his fury, Kojiro lost control, and in that moment of weakness, Musashi struck. The battle was won long before the first move was made. When an enemy is emotional, they are already defeated. True power lies in the ability to dictate the terms of engagement without ever reacting. Socrates, Steve Jobs, Musashi, what did they all have in common? They never wasted energy on pointless arguments. They did not react. They dictated. They understood that true power is not in words, but in influence. The next time you feel the urge to argue, ask yourself, am I in control or am I being controlled? Because power is not found in noise. Power is silent. Why do we argue? What is this deep-rooted need to prove ourselves right, to push back, to defend ideas even when the argument itself leads nowhere? Most believe arguments are about truth. They are not. Arguments are about power. The more we argue, the more we expose our insecurities, our triggers, our weaknesses. And more importantly, we reveal that someone else has the power to make us react. Nietzsche understood this. His philosophy of the Übermensch was not about brute force, but about such control over oneself that others fall into one's influence without ever realizing it. Psychology confirms what Nietzsche knew. Arguments are not logical, they are emotional. When we argue, we think we are standing for our beliefs, but in reality, we are just reacting to deeper psychological triggers. Cognitive biases shape the way we fight. The brain isn't wired for truth. It's wired to win. Confirmation bias ensures we only see what supports our beliefs. The backfire effect makes us double down instead of changing our minds. The Dunning-Kruger effect convinces the least knowledgeable to be the most confident. In most debates, no one listens. They merely wait for their turn to speak. The Übermensch sidesteps this trap. He listens, observes, and determines if engagement is even worth his time. But the real reason we argue isn't logic, it's identity. When a belief is challenged, it doesn't feel like a simple disagreement. It feels like a personal attack. This is why debates over politics, religion, or philosophy escalate so quickly. People don't just defend ideas, they defend their sense of self. And the moment someone makes you emotional, they control you. The powerful never allow themselves to be baited. They do not react. They observe, analyze, and only respond when it serves their purpose. At the heart of most arguments lies the need for validation. People don't just want to be right. They want to be seen as right. They seek approval. They crave recognition. But the Übermensch has no such need. He does not argue to prove himself. He does not seek validation. He moves with purpose, executes his vision, and lets his actions speak louder than words. The most influential figures in history never wasted time arguing with critics. They remained focused, undistracted, unshaken. Psychological research only reinforces these truths. The most powerful people in any group are not those who speak the most, but those who control the flow of conversation. They don't interrupt, they don't over-explain, they command attention through strategic silence. Their words carry weight because they are not thrown carelessly. They speak rarely, but when they do, others listen. True persuasion isn't in volume, it's in presence. Self-restraint is the greatest weapon in any argument. Behavioral studies show that those who remain calm and composed are far more persuasive than those who react emotionally. Because control over oneself is control over others. And in the end, true power belongs not to the one who shouts the loudest, but to the one who never needed to raise his voice at all. Think about it. If someone insults you and you react, you have already lost. If someone challenges you and you feel the need to defend yourself, you have lost. If you get dragged into an argument just to prove that you are right, you have lost. But if you observe, stay calm, and respond only when it serves your purpose, you have already won. Nietzsche's philosophy is not about staying silent forever. It's about choosing your battles. Ask yourself, am I speaking because I want to or because I feel forced to? Am I reacting emotionally or am I in control of my response? Is this argument worth my energy or am I just feeding my ego? True power, as Nietzsche saw it, is not in words. It's in the silence before the words. It's in the pause that makes others lean in, the decision to speak only when it truly matters. That is the silent trick that gives you power. But does that mean you should always remain silent? Silence can be a weapon, but wielding it indiscriminately can be as foolish as speaking without thought. If silence were the only path to power, then history's greatest thinkers, revolutionaries, and visionaries would have remained unheard. And yet they spoke. Because real power is not in avoiding conflict, it's in knowing when to engage and when to hold back. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power was never about passivity. It was about domination, growth, and self-overcoming. True power is not found in silence alone. It's found in control. Avoiding conflict completely is not wisdom. It is fear disguised as restraint. Mastering conflict does not mean rejecting it. It means using it as a tool. The Übermensch does not argue over trivial matters, but he also does not run from necessary battles. He understands that conflict is a crucible for strength. Why do most people avoid arguments? Because they are uncomfortable. But Nietzsche knew that discomfort breeds growth. Struggle is not something to be avoided, it is necessary. Imagine a warrior who never enters battle. A blade that is never tested against steel will never be battle-ready. Likewise, a mind that is never challenged remains dull, weak, and fragile. Without intellectual conflict, ideas remain untested. Without struggle, convictions remain hollow. Look at history's boldest thinkers. Galileo was condemned for challenging the church's view of the universe. Socrates was sentenced to death for questioning conventional beliefs. Nietzsche himself was dismissed as a madman in his time, yet his ideas shaped modern thought. Their power did not come from silence. It came from choosing their battles wisely and engaging in necessary conflict. There is a difference between arguing to prove you are right and arguing to shape reality. The greatest leaders, philosophers, and visionaries don't avoid arguments. They use them strategically. Socrates did not attack beliefs directly. He questioned them until they collapsed on their own. Nietzsche's writings were designed to challenge, provoke, and shake people out of their mental complacency. Steve Jobs didn't avoid conflict. He used it to push people beyond their limits and drive innovation. Powerful people don't argue for validation. They argue for transformation. They don't fight to win debates. They fight to shape the world in their vision. The Übermensch does not argue to satisfy his ego. He argues with purpose. Engage when the argument sharpens your thinking, when it reveals deeper truths, when it pushes you or others to grow, when it shifts power in your favor. But do not engage when you are just defending your ego, when the other person is not open to change, when it is a pointless emotional battle, when your silence itself is a power move. Arguing without strategy is weakness. Arguing with precision is power. Nietzsche was not afraid of arguments. He embraced conflict, but on his own terms. If an argument makes you weaker, avoid it. If an argument makes you stronger, engage with it. If an argument is just a distraction, ignore it completely. Conflict, when mastered, is not something to be feared. It is something to be wielded. Now imagine this. You wake up one day and a voice tells you that you only have 100 words left to speak in your entire life. Every sentence, every word now carries weight. Would you waste them in a heated argument? Would you spend them trying to prove yourself to someone who isn't even listening? Or would you choose them carefully, like a warrior sharpening his final blade before battle? This is where real power lies. Nietzsche understood something that most people ignore. Words are currency. The more you spend them carelessly, the less valuable they become. Picture yourself in an argument. Your heart races, your mind floods with comebacks and defenses. You are dying to prove your point. But stop, breathe. Ask yourself, who truly holds the power here? The one frantically trying to prove himself, or the one who knows when to stay silent? Because silence is not weakness. It is strategy. It is control. It is the art of making others question themselves without you ever needing to convince them. So here is the challenge. Next time you are about to argue, pause. Instead of reacting immediately, observe. Watch how the other person reveals their weaknesses. See how they expose their fears and insecurities just by the way they speak. And then, when the time is right, choose your words like a master. Or don't speak at all. Because true power is silent.